Hello, 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 and welcome to the Geneie podcast. If you're new around here, my name is Selma, and I'm the host of the Geneie podcast. On this show, we talk about everything to do with science, particularly genetics, and this is our second season. I'm gonna insert a little confetti sound here, so wait for it. All right, so yeah, this is season 2, episode 1, and we are so excited for this to be happening. The first season was great, but hopefully this one will be much better. So, for season 2, we wanted to start off strong and talk about a topic that I think is very interesting to everyone and one that I've been wanting to talk about personally for such a long time now, and that is why genetics. So, I've been asked this question a lot, why are you pursuing a career in genetics? Why are you doing genetics? And today, with the help of a few of my friends, our lovely panelists, Tariq, Aya, and Esteban, I'm going to be answering these questions about why we decided to get into genetics and what a scientific training in genetics currently looks like. So I'm really excited to be talking to these amazing minds and hear how each person and hear what each person's individual story is and get into the nitty-gritty details of why we decided to do genetics. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, please stay tuned, as I think this is going to be an amazing discussion. And yeah, let's get right into it. Well, once again, welcome to the Geneie podcast, season 2, episode 1. Let's get started. Hey everyone, it's so great to have you on the Geneie. I'm so excited to be collaborating with such an amazing group of thinkers and scientists in our first episode of the new season. I've already introduced you guys briefly in our opening, but could each of you tell our listeners and yourselves, could each of you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and what you're currently doing in relation to genetics?
Do you want to go first?
Sure. So, my name is Aya. I'm from Bahrain and I'm 20 years old. I study at King's College London and I'm currently in my third year, which is my final year of the Bachelor's of Science degree. And I just love genetics ever since I was in high school, and even my subjects at university are all genetics related. Even though I have the choice for them not to be, I still choose to make them somehow genetics related. And I kind of try to balance between both lab and research work. I'm hoping by the end of this year I'll know which one I like more, but as of right now I don't really know. And yeah, that's me.
Cool, thanks for sharing.
My name is Tariq Murad. I'm from Saudi Arabia, Jeddah. I go to Brunel University. I currently study biomedical science as well. This is my first year, and I'm really taking this just to learn more about biomedical science in the field of research, scientists, all that. And hopefully, I'm looking to go into the medicine field after that, and we'll see how life takes us. I'm more focusing on eczema and all that, and research. So I'm more focusing on that in the future.
Cool. Thank you guys for sharing. That sounds amazing. So, Aya and Tariq, my first question relates to the title of this episode, and that is, of course, why genetics? What made you choose genetics or science as a potential career or educational path?
Tariq, would you like to go first? Yeah.
Sure. Really, I wanted to do computer science at first, just because I didn't know really what I wanted to do. But then, doing my research and all that, really, what do I want to do in life? What do I want to study? What is it do every day when I wake up? I started looking at okay, what do I love? What am I passionate about? And then I realized, okay, I really want to help people who are suffering from eczema and all that, and that's really my main goal. So I told myself, how am I going to do that? I need to learn the science of it first. I need to go step by step. So I said, okay, you know what? Biomedical science, it looks really fun. I see myself every day going into the lab, researching, like working with other people, cooperating. So I said, you know what, I'm gonna give this a go. And so far, I'm in my first year, and I'm loving it so far.
That's so cool. Thank you for sharing.
Bro.
Yeah, I agree with Tariq as well. For me, I think it was more that like I really do see it being big and advancing in the future. It can really like revolutionize modern medicine. And not only that, I think like also coming from Bahrain, I feel like the whole Middle Eastern region needs some more awareness of genetics, and like especially since there's so many genetically passed diseases like sickle cell, like G6PD, even intermarriages that's really common in the region. Like I just think people need to be more aware of it and get offered a bunch of different genetic methods to deal with.
Yeah, I completely agree. That's one of the reason I'm trying to go into genetic counseling after uni is because I think we need a lot of education on
Exactly.
genetic fields. I personally went into genetics, like to be completely honest, I hated genetics in high school. I was doing IB, so we got to take like little snippets of each course in bio. So, like a bit of anatomy, a bit of nutrition, ecology, things like that. And genetics was our third topic. I remember because I hated it so
Topic
much.
three.
Yeah. And I was just like, what is this? I don't want to know. I don't really care about meiosis. It's not my thing. And I was actually considering applying to uni for art and then psychology. And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to try biomedical science, like Tariq. So my family was like, okay, let's do that. And so I applied for a foundation degree in Queen Mary in London for biomedical science, or just for science and engineering. That did not work out very well. My exam grades were really bad, and the uni was like, listen, you have two options. Either you go somewhere else, or if you stay in the UK, you have to do a year of A levels. And yeah, I wasn't doing that because of my 2 year experience with
With
IB.
IB. You
So
just didn't want to
yeah,
Yeah,
repeat the same process again.
exactly.
exactly.
What's the point? So I was
Exactly.
like, you know what? Maybe this is a sign. So I moved to Boston, to Suffolk. Shout out Suffolk people. And I was doing this kind of introductory semester while they were recounting my grades. And when the time came to declare a major, they were like, okay, you can go undeclared or choose whatever you want. So pick. And I was telling them, I don't know, I want something sciencey, but I also want to do journalism, so I don't know what to pick. And at that point, I used to think that doing a double major meant that you got two separate degrees, but that's really not the case. It's just like something, a double major is something you do on the side for fun. And so
Hmm.
I was like, okay, I'll go with biology. If that doesn't work, I'll change. And since then, I've just been obsessed with the world of STEM. And when I took my first genetics class, I was like, wow, this is so much more interesting than IB science made it out to be. And it's just really interesting that our bodies can do so many different things and produce so many different things. And then at the end of that course, we had like a guest speaker that was a genetic counselor, and she came and told us that her job was basically a mixture of talking to patients and running tests and also doing research. It's like, that's amazing. I mean, I don't have to go to med school to do that. So since then, it's been in my mind, like, I want to do genetic counseling. And the more I research and the more courses I take, that's just like, that's something that I think I see myself doing in the future.
Yeah, and it just feels like it's the perfect fit for you. Like, you know.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. It made sense. It made sense. So, did any of you guys have doubts about choosing genetics or science in general? If so, what were they, and how do you overcome them?
You want to go for it first? Should I?
Yeah, sure. I don't think it was more, I don't think I had like something like a personal doubt. I think it was just more like, you know how it's not very common, like where we come from, for someone to major in something with like a life science. It's like medicine or like business or law. There's not really like those uncommon majors. So I felt like at the beginning, I was a bit hesitant because I was like, I couldn't see myself working in a place in Bahrain yet that like offered the same thing that I was studying. So I think it was more like a worry. But then I realized like, okay, this is a science major. Like it's like one of the most powerful majors like in the world. It can get you anywhere. So yeah, I was happy about it at the end.
Yeah, that's amazing.
What about you,
Uh,
Tariq?
with me, really, looking at science itself, I've taken like chemistry and biology and physics in high school, so like I'm familiar with that field. But like me going into it, I know it's gonna be hard, and I know it's gonna be pretty challenging because like I know like I have several friends who are taking the same course as I am, and they're pretty bright, mashallah, tabarakallah. So like I had to step up my game. I had to like talk to myself and think, am I gonna be able to do this? So like whenever there's a will, there's a what was it? When there's a will, there's a
There's a way.
something.
Yeah.
Way.
There's a way. There you go. So I said I'll go for it. I'll give it my all. My mom supported me throughout the whole thing, and my dad, and they said go for it. And yeah, I went for it. I applied, and I said I'm gonna just change my ways, study more, like put in the work. And alhamdulillah, I've graduated from like a past foundation year. So here I'm in first year, and hopefully, like step by step, give it my all.
Yeah, that sounds great. I mean, I think self-doubt is one of the biggest challenges we have to overcome, especially Aya, for us as women in science, because that's
Exactly.
not like we're already a minority, and then in our respective communities, it's an even smaller community, especially since we're focusing on genetics. So
Mm-hmm.
it's just like we're in a non-existing circle. So, Tariq, you're very new to formal scientific training. How has
Yeah.
the transition from high school science to college level science been? So, tell us about your inspirations, struggles, successes, everything. We'd love to hear about your perspective as a new incoming scientist.
It's been very different because I myself did not take IB. I dropped out like in the beginning of year 11 IB and just went for the American diploma. So I didn't really know how to like because American diploma wasn't really that much of a struggle when it comes to science. So I didn't really know how hard it would be, but I had an idea that it would be hard. So going into year one, especially, um, so far it's been a lot of content, and just you have to keep up with what you're doing, and you just have to stay motivated because like, motivation is really hard to keep, and especially the more you go on into uni. And what's really important is you have to have, in my opinion, like good friends that support you throughout it, because you can have people telling you, oh, let's just go out, and then yeah, you keep missing out on work, and then you find yourself 2 weeks 3 weeks behind, and that's bad. But I've actually found myself like, especially these past 2 3 months, focusing more, sitting in this desk, just studying and studying and studying, and like playing less and going out less. I've restricted myself to going out once a week, and it's benefited me a lot. I've been revising every day, like all the work I'm doing, I haven't seen it in my life, and it's so much work, but I'm going through it one step by step, and every time I find myself struggling or thinking this is too much, how am I gonna know this? How am I gonna remember this? I'm just telling myself. I find myself telling myself, it's okay. Finish, just do the work, and then come back at it. And then I do that, and I eventually find myself like understanding the concept. And inspiration wise, I actually get most of my inspiration from like two of my best friends. They support me throughout everything I do, like every question I have, because they both, one of them takes medicine here in Saudi, and the other is studying with me in King's University in biomedical science. So they're both supporting me throughout the whole thing. He's a year ahead of me, and they're both, mashallah, very bright. So they're like inspiring me to keep going, and like, yeah, it's been working out so far, alhamdulillah.
Yeah, I think having friends that do the same thing as you is very motivating because sometimes when you just
Right.
wanna geek out to somebody, they're there
Exactly.
and they're the only people that can understand you. I was at a gathering once and I was talking to my dentist friend about I don't remember what it was. I think it was ligands or something like that. And then we were just debating on how it was pronounced. And then my other friend was like, are you guys still talking about science? And I was like, yes, she's the only one that gets me. Let me live. But yeah, I love the fact that you're so motivated, mashallah. For me, that's been watering down as I continue in my
Yeah, don't
education
worry. And by the time you
stages.
get to your final year, it's completely watered down until it becomes a force of habit. So, mashallah alayk.
Thanks for that. Thanks for that. Yeah, mashallah. Like I envy you. I wish I was still
Thank
my
you.
freshman self and still had the same study
Still
habits.
early for me.
Yep, you'll get there. You'll get there. No, but
Thank you.
speaking about inspirations, I know we briefly mentioned this when I asked why genetics, but what inspires you, both in your work and in your personal lives? And do these inspirations feed off of one another?
You want me to go for it?
Yeah, go for it. Nice question. I need to think about that actually.
Thanks.
Yeah, no. Really, inspiration. If you go more detail with my inspiration, like it's a bit personal, but I'm really open about it. Like I said before, in like I've been like alhamdulillah, I'm been going through like I've been diagnosed with eczema my whole life. So like the struggles you get sometimes, like that really, I look back at that and I think, and I that really motivates me. It's like I, aside from my work, I really just look into like research about it and like all the details about it and how it relates to your body. Because the other day I find myself working through my anatomy work, and then I was like, I took a break and I was researching a little bit about eczema, and then I found myself looking at the exact same two diagrams in my textbook and in the research page I found. They were both describing the epidermis and like the layers and something, and there was this protein called fibrin, something like that, that has to relate to with hydration with people with eczema, and they lack that. So I was looking at it and I was like, oh, this relates, and I was like, I was getting motivated. I was saying this. I'm getting there. I'm understanding slowly, and yeah, that inspired me a bit. But usually, if I'm ever down or like not down, but if I'm ever in need of an inspiration, I just step back and think about why I'm doing this, and then that really motivates me. Even if I'm like in a long night work out like working session and I'm like really sleepy, I just take a step back, think about that, and I get energized again.
Yeah,
Aya?
that's actually really nice to hear.
Yeah.
I think for me, I have like two, like, they're not really personal, but it's just maybe again, it goes back to why I chose genetics. So when I was younger, like, I always used to ask my parents, because like I have a cousin who has blue eyes and no one in the family has blue eyes. So I used to ask my parents, I'm like, how did she end up with blue eyes? And like, no one in the family has blue eyes, and like no one could answer me. Like they just say it's genetics and it would, and they'd stop there. And then I'd be like,
Yeah.
how? Like why? So I think that was one thing. And a second thing, it's also a bit very personal, but I can't bear to see like children or just people in general, specifically like cancer patients, different types of patients. Like it's just an issue that actually gets to me like on a personal level. And like I wanted to go into the field to feel good, if that makes sense. Like I feel like I am contributing to like a development in modern day medicine, even if it's so small, even if I'm just studying it, working on like different types of medicines that are being created. It's just a feeling that I get. Like at the end of the day, I feel happy, I feel rewarded, kind of, knowing that like I picked a major that's so big in the world and like it's very like, even if it's controversial, it's still something that's constantly changing for the better. What inspires me, to be honest, like I've found two people in my course. We've been together since first year and we work together constantly. Like I always think that science is more of a team effort rather than
Mhm.
individual,
Yeah.
especially like as you grow up. Maybe Tariq, in your first year, it might not be the case, because also in my first year, we didn't really have much of teamwork. But later, you work in the labs together, you do research papers, you stay up for hours together, all working on the same thing. So for me, they inspire me a lot. It's like I want to get the job done with them, and then at the end, we really end up like getting the job done like quite well. So it's a very good feeling, and it's a cycle. We motivate each other, and like it's really good. Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's exciting to hear.
What
I'm
about
sorry.
you, Selma?
No, that's like really exciting to hear.
Yeah,
I'm
I,
motivated.
I love your answers, Yani Majid. Your answers were inspiring. I feel like what I'm
Really?
about
Oh
to
my
sing
god, I
is
told
like
you I had to take
Thank you
time
not
to
so much.
think about it.
compared. Like you brought a tear to my eye. Um, I don't know. I mean, I think I was the same as both of you actually. I I was always asking, okay, طب why? Or like when this is really like basic, but you know when you're a kid and your teacher makes you do that experiment where you grow like a sapling on a cotton bed with
Yeah.
water. Like my mind was blown by that. Like what that can happen. I mean, I've seen plants, but to actually be able to propagate that was just mind blowing to me. And I was always into like science classes and things like that. And Tariq, I also have a personal inspiration. My dad passed away when I was 2 from liver cancer, and I
Allah
was
yarhamah.
always, Allah yarham, I was always interested in why, like what happens, what goes wrong in people with cancer or with genetic diseases. My cousin Omar actually has G6PD, and we did an episode on that. And when I was researching everything that he had, I was like, well, I think it was a combination of me being at the stage in my education where I could read and like fully understand scientific papers, and the fact that I could get what was in the paper was so like that in itself is inspiring. Like, oh yeah, I get what they're talking about.
What
When
they're
most
saying,
people, yeah,
exactly.
would
Yeah.
just look at it and be like, that's not for me. I mean, sometimes research papers are a bit too much, but I love being able to understand what's going on in the world of research and treatments. And so I'm currently taking a cancer bio class, and just to be able to understand, like, for example, what went wrong in my dad or what goes wrong in different cancer patients and like different subtypes is so, I don't know, it's just really cool. It makes me really geeked out.
I get that. Like when you understand what you're doing, it's the best thing. Honestly, it gives you like a little boost of serotonin, I guess, or something, and you're like,
Yeah,
oh god, oh
it
god.
definitely does. And it's
Yeah,
specifically when you like learn something and then you connect it to a real life situation, you're like, this is what like it tied it all together, basically.
yeah.
Exactly.
So, Aya, this next question
Yes.
is for you. Women like us, as we were mentioning briefly before, generally have a hard time in STEM fields purely because we are women. There are growing movements that support women in STEM, but I wanted to ask you about your experience with the patriarchy when it comes to science.
Not gonna lie, like it has been difficult. Like whoever I come across, whether it's family, friends, whether it's new people in the society, it's like, and every time I come back, especially now since I'm in my third year, they just immediately come up to me and just say like, okay, but like, what are you gonna do with your major? Like as simple as that. They just throw me that question, like, yeah, like you're not gonna do anything with it. Like, why are you doing it? Like you're not gonna go work in a lab. We don't have a lab. So it is quite difficult. Like it's like but then again, this goes back to us saying how people need to become more aware and need to be more educated, because as soon as I actually like open my mouth and I start telling them more about the major, they're like, oh, now I get why you're studying. It's just a cycle. Like genuinely, you guys, this happens so much with me. So I think I deal with it well, because like I'm someone who's always been so knowledgeable, and like I like to read a lot. I like to expose myself to different types of education, studies, cultures. I'm just someone who likes to branch out in general. So I've learned to deal with that, because like if I'm satisfied with what I'm doing, then that's all that matters to me, you know.
True.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
some hard hitting words, but they're facts right there.
No,
Yeah.
facts,
Exactly.
throwing facts.
Agree. Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think the question of, yeah, okay, what are you going to do with that is so damaging because I mean, we know the parents and the families that
Exactly.
assume like, okay, if you're not a doctor, lawyer, or engineer, you're a failure. And when you say I'm doing science, some people automatically assume that that means being a
A
doctor. And
doctor.
then there's like I think in the community have a lack of awareness about the different subtypes of
Exactly.
science and how each
Yeah.
one on its own is useful and contributes to things like medicine wouldn't be where it is today without research and things like
Exactly.
that. So, yeah, I mean, like you can't expect everyone to be a doctor because if there's nobody researching in the lab, then who's gonna make the stuff the doctors are
The
prescribing?
doctor.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So yeah. Okay, so now we're all studying abroad or in a country that isn't our own, and we're all minorities in that sense. And I guess this question relates to the one that I just asked you, Aya, but how do you guys feel as an ethnic minority in the UK pursuing genetics or science? Do you feel like you're presented with equal opportunities for work and study, and why? what are your challenges with the system?
Hmm.
I know
When
that
you
was
say
kind of a
It was, yeah,
when you say system, do you mean as in like the education system, or then the whole,
the
like, you know?
the whole experience.
Yeah.
yeah, I feel like the educational system in regards to like for example, internships or
Yeah.
being able to work or do
Mm.
things like that. Because for me in the US, okay, so fun story. I was offered a TA position from my genetics teacher to be her teacher's assistant for the genetics class. When I got that email, I was about to fly because that meant grading people's tests and designing the course and doing all of that for genetics. So I was just like, I need to
Over
do
the
this.
moon.
But when I emailed her, she was telling me that she had a grant to give to a student to work for her for compensation, so for like money. And I told her that I couldn't accept money because if I do that, then my visa turns into a work visa, and
Mm.
it causes problems with immigration and things like that. Meanwhile, my friends that are American or that are US citizens and like in general, they have so many opportunities to work in labs on campus and they can do TA positions and it's no big deal. So for me, sometimes I just look at it and I'm like, okay, you know how you need experience to get into jobs and things like that? Like, how am I going to get any experience if I'm always just looking from the outside? So that was just
Exactly.
kind of my question, if like you guys had similar
Mm.
experiences.
For me, honestly, I haven't really gotten into that yet. I'm pretty sure I'm gonna start looking into that more once I get there, probably end of this term or next year. But I've seen my visa, and it also doesn't really tell me that I have a lot of hours compared to people who are there. So I get what you
Yeah.
mean by the oh, you need experience, and why would you not like have the same experience as them, opportunities. So yeah, I kind of feel similar to you, but I didn't really take a placement year that has experience. I'd finish in 3 instead of 4. So because I know I have a lot of years ahead of me with biomedical science and like postgraduate and medicine, inshallah. So like I haven't really thought much of that, but probably it's gonna be a problem I face in the future.
Hopefully not.
Hopefully not. Yeah, hopefully not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, I've changed a lot between my first and second year and then my second and third year. In a way where I've definitely become more, I depend a lot more on like making really good relationships with my professors in order for them to help me later in the future, knowing that I'm like an international student and I don't have easy access the same way UK citizens or Europeans at the time, but I don't know now with
Smart.
Brexit, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just try to really work on establishing a really good relationship with them, which is something I worked on in my second and third year because in my first year, I had applied for an internship during the summer and I remember it was such a cool email. I remember they replied back to me and they were like, sorry, like we don't really have a high percentage for international students, and we're giving it more for like our UK citizens and for second and third years. And I was like, okay, fine, like the second and third year part is okay. But then I went and asked around in my course for the same people who applied to that same internship, and then a lot of them, actually, the UK ones, the UK citizens one, were like, "Oh yeah, we got the internship and like a funded scholarship as well, and stuff like that." So that was where I decided I'm like, no, I'm gonna work my way up, and I'm gonna befriend all my professors. I don't know if befriend's the right word, but you know what I mean.
I know what you mean, yeah.
Yeah.
I think establishing good relationships, whether it's with like your friends or with your instructors or professors, is really important because
Yeah,
college is also low-key and networking setup where you have
definitely.
to like make yourself out to be really special.
Yeah,
So
you
that
do
was
need
it.
good connections. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. That was really interesting to hear. Thank you guys for
Yeah.
sharing that. So, my next question has to do with the representation of scientists and specifically in genetics. Now, I started this podcast to communicate facts and knowledge to members of the public that might not be interested in genetics or science at all. But I feel like if we don't look at science from a fun perspective, then we're kind of stuck with like the age-old picture of a crazy guy with with white hair in a lab coat. And that also goes back to the underrepresentation of women in STEM, with some
Exactly.
sort of like green chemical in a beaker. You know the type.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I think that's true, especially for genetics, since most people that I know at least think genetics is just making clones or doing something evil in a lab, especially now with like CRISPR and CAR T cells. So I guess my question is, as a scientist, what role are you or are you hoping to play in changing the negative connotations generally associated with science and genetics?
So I definitely feel like, or at least for me, I've always been the type that's more like I like to speak rather than like the scientist that's just in the lab, like doing the work and stuff.
Yeah.
So that's where I feel like I can actually take what I learn in uni or in my classes and then translate those like really nasty like zinc finger words to Cas13 CRISPR into something that everyone can understand. So
Yeah.
it simply like lies in literally you knowing how to talk about your major. It's like talking to kids. Like when
Yeah.
you teach them the alphabets, it's just about how you go around teaching them the alphabets. You know what I mean? And it's like the easier way out. It's being simple. It's being straightforward to the point, and always making sure that like they're gonna be interested, and it's something that they go home and think about rather than just something they listen and then never think about it again. You know?
Yeah. What about you, Tariq?
How I can really answer this is would be, because when your family members ask you about like what are you doing and all that, and like you don't really want to show them, because like what you said, the chemicals and the white hair and all that. That's what really they're thinking, and you really want to change their perception on that. So like I tell them, I'm like the more I tell my family about lab work and all these different like experiments and you're doing in lab, and the ones I'm currently missing out on because I'm in Saudi. Uh, they're getting excited about it. And also my dad, he talked to me the other day and he was like, "Oh, I'm gonna get you let's get a room and like get you a lab setup and everything." He was joking around about that, but like he was excited about that, and I've never seen him more like excited about what I'm doing. And also like how you, Selma, how you're like making this whole Instagram page and all this podcast and how you're showing people like science is actually fun. I have a couple of friends who actually like enjoyed your podcast, and like yeah. For me, honestly, how I can make it fun is just the way I tell people. But future wise, I'd love, like I can relate to you, Aya. Like I like to speak. I like to do that, and I hope I could do what you exactly said right there. And yeah, that's for me right now.
Yeah,
Oh,
and definitely, like, just to add to what he said about you starting this podcast, like, when I first saw it, I definitely felt like, okay, this was the first step to, like, everyone, like, knowing what genetics actually is in, like, the best way possible. Because, like, I feel like you've been so clear with, like, every single episode is just, mashallah, like, you're so clear and it's so simple, yet it has so much content, So it definitely made me feel, like, so much better about the field and accepting the fact more and more about me being a scientist.
you guys are gonna make me
Yeah.
cry. Thank you so much. I mean, I'm always like doubting, did that come across clear enough? Would someone like my mom get it? Like people in my family are actually like, you know what? We don't want to know what you're doing anymore. Just put everything on the podcast, like digest it a bit, and then we'll
We
we'll,
listen.
we'll listen. Yeah, because when I was doing my molecular genetics class, I was quarantining with my cousin and his wife and their kids in LA at the time. And whenever I'd finish a lecture, I'd be like, "Oh, did you know that Audrey Hepburn is really tiny because her mother was like put in a famine towards the end of her pregnancy and it interfered with her DNA methylation and things like that?" And they were like, "What are you saying?"
Saying,
But that
yeah.
sounds really cool. So my cousin was like, "Why don't you start a podcast?" And I was like, "Me, a podcast? I'm not really the type of person that does things like this. I'm really shy and introverted, and it's just not my scene." But I think once I personally started talking to people, I I think I'm doing a good job of like digesting things for people, and that sounds really gross. I mean, like diluting things for people to understand, and not in a way that like insults them, but like just in a way that makes what we're doing easier. Because like if you go
To
and tell someone,
understand, yeah.
yeah, like,
Exactly.
oh, T cells attached to the major histocompatibility complex to elicit an immune response, as opposed to like, oh, your cells attached to this protein, and then you have immunity, and that can be like also used against COVID. I mean, I think, like you were saying, Aya, the way you phrase things is really important, and the way you deliver it to people that aren't in the field is also important. So yeah, I've enjoyed doing it so far. I think I am a podcast person.
You're doing
So
good at it.
And it's just the start. I mean, you never know. Like every day you're like getting better and better. So like in a year's time, like who knows, it's gonna be like the podcast's gonna blow and like it's gonna be this huge thing and
Inshallah.
like
oh my god, imagine my fans, my fans. Um, so the next question I have is very tricky, I think, to pinpoint, but it might be really easy for you guys. I don't know. For me, it's too complicated, but I'll throw it at you anyway. So what? One second, I lost it. Okay, so what is your favorite part about what you're doing and why?
You want to go for Aya first, or should I?
no, go for it.
Okay, sure. Honestly, I've spoken to you about this before, Selma. It's really the labs. I enjoy, like, I've done 2 lab works before in foundation, but due to COVID, I had to leave and dip to Saudi. But I am eager to continue lab work. I really want to just stand up in front of like other people with them and just collaborate and work. And I've done titration and I think osmosis experiments. And right now,
Nice.
thank you, and what my university are doing they're doing. I'm not really. I don't remember what they're doing, but they're doing a lot of experiments, and it looks so complex and everything, and that really motivates me. I really want to go and like work on it, and then when I finish all the lab work, go home and look at what I did and look at my results and do the lab report, because that's really like one of my favorite parts of this whole major. That's the labs and the lab reports. It's really fun.
Yeah, honestly,
I'm
me
glad
too.
to see someone really finds lab reports fun. Like you go, Tariq, honestly.
Thank you.
I'm the same. I sometimes, like, when I'm in lab, I'm just like, what are we doing? What are we doing? What are we doing? And then when it's time to come to the lab report, I'm like, oh my god, I didn't know what was going on this
What was
entire time.
right?
And I mean, now how am I gonna write it? But then, like, when you start going back and looking at everything and like putting it into words, I mean, for me, it's like, yeah, I'm presenting my
Like this
work.
is
I
why
can
I'm
do
doing
that.
it. Yeah.
Exactly.
My
Yeah.
favorite
Exactly.
part of all of the entire like process of the lab report is the end product. It's just like looking at scrolling through my entire work and like, I did this. Okay, I did this. I did this. Oh,
Yeah.
and I
It's
understood it.
Yeah, it's refreshing when you get a good grade too. It's like,
Yeah, I
Exactly.
see,
was
I
just
put
gonna
it in
say.
good words.
Work well
Like
done.
I
Exactly.
definitely get so happy when I just see that my Turnitin score is like less than 10% because I know that like this is my work.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think for me it's 2 main things. The first thing, it's an example actually. So last year, which was in my second year of the degree, we had a lab extensive course, which went on for 9 weeks of lab every Monday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Okay, it was just us in the lab. We had a 1 hour lunch break. And it was basically to design a drug called retaplase, which is being used to prevent cardiac attacks.
Cool.
So it took a really long process and it was really fun. And actually, no, it wasn't really fun until the last week where the guy who was leading our lab was like, okay, you guys, you should feel so accomplished and so proud of yourself. In this lab itself, there's around $40 million worth of drugs being sold in the market, but the fact that you guys aren't certified scientists is the reason why you can't make this money. But then and then we all felt like everyone was standing there and everyone had their like hands on their hearts and like our jaws were dropped. We were just like, that's where you feel like, okay, this is definitely paying off and this makes me love what I'm doing even more. Do you know
Yeah,
what I
and
mean?
yeah, and it's not just about like the money either at the end of the day. It's like also, oh my God, I did something
It's
that
just
that could
accomplishing.
potentially help millions of people.
Yeah,
And like
Exactly.
for
you
sure.
did it. It's like I
Yeah,
did
it's like we
it.
did it exactly.
Yeah.
I think that was one thing, and then this year I'm working on a dissertation that is about corona. So it's very topical, and it's very. I think it's the research is very like recent. Like every day there's like around 20, 30 articles. So it's definitely very interesting to feel like you're working on something that's so topical and that's like in the hands of all the scientists in the world.
What's your
So
dissertation?
It's basically about you have to talk about the roles of proteins that produce the immune response through the SARS-CoV strain. But I decided to talk about the side of proteins, which is called non-structural proteins, which aren't really being focused to develop alternative therapies. And I'm just trying to prove the different ways they can be used to develop alternative therapies instead of just the
That's
vaccine.
really cool.
It's a lot of work, but it's
Good luck
interesting.
with that.
Yeah, definitely needed. But thank you.
Yeah, I think I don't know what my favorite thing is. I mean, like I said at the start, this is a really hard question for me to answer because honestly, like it can be something as simple as going into the lab and just using the micro pipette. I mean, that's
Yeah.
really fun for me. I could just sit and pipette all day. And then it comes to like writing lab reports and presenting your research and also doing the podcast and like researching for that and like doing all the artwork and things like that, like making it apply to genetics. Like all of these things make me really happy with what I'm choosing to do. And I really like in my courses when I get assigned a project or something to do, it's like my professor basically likes to throw us into these really complex projects. And at first, you're just like, okay, how am I going to get through this? How am I going to understand this? But then when you start doing it and you get it and you put the pieces together and you understand what you're researching, it's really cool.
It's
It
fulfilling.
is. I second that. Yeah.
Yep. So, looking back at the journey from this point, or Tariq looking ahead, is there anything that you would have done or would do differently or change with your experiences?
Hmm. Looking ahead with me, for me.
Yeah, or like looking back at like high school days.
Honestly, I genuinely feel that I wouldn't change a thing, even though I could have like take like now with the workload I'm having, I feel like I could have taken IB back then, but everything happened for a reason, and it shaped me to be the person I am today. So I'm really
Mhm.
thankful for everything that's happened so far, and yeah, just developing as a person, learning more and seeing how I used to like, study back then for the exam by a day or two, taking everything in all nighters to today, like studying months and months of work before the exam, and then potting it like, and then study. Then I haven't gotten exams yet, but I have done a quiz, and l- the way I've taught, like then like studying is just fulfilling because I'm like, okay, I know all this now. I can just brush through my work, and I'm ready for this quiz and hopefully the exams. But yeah, looking back, I'm grateful for everything. I feel like if I have the same mindset I do now back then, I feel like I would have been like I would have achieved better in the IB and not dropped it. But I'm grateful for that. And looking ahead, I hope that I keep the motivation I have right now. And if everything stays the same, I hope that like if everything stays the same, I'm gonna achieve the same like goals I still have.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I agree with Tariq. I am definitely a firm believer in like everything happens for a reason, and like
Mhm.
therefore I don't have any regrets. But I definitely, like if I were to go back, let's say 3 years before starting my university experience, I definitely feel like I would have liked to get some sort of lab exposure or lab experience through maybe just a small internship
Mhm.
beforehand, before actually entering the field, because like I feel like it's important to know what you're getting yourself into, not just with university. This applies with almost anything in life. It's always good to have a glimpse of what's coming ahead. So that's something I would have done differently. But other than that, no, alhamdulillah, like I'm really glad with where I am. And I definitely feel like I've changed a lot throughout the three
Mhm.
years. Like my education has taught me how to act in like during life, like the street smart type, and like vice versa. So I think this all just comes with experience, honestly.
Yeah,
What
I
about you,
think so
Agreed.
Selma?
too. Yeah, I agree with what you guys have said. Alhamdulillah, I'm really grateful for my experience. I definitely think I went to the UK for a reason. and that things didn't work out for a reason. And I'm grateful that they didn't work out, because I don't think I would have been as in love with science if I had stayed in the UK, because it was just a really bad fit for me, even though I didn't want to admit it. And I went to Boston going like, you know what, I'm planning on hating it so that I can come back and study in Saudi, because like America's a million miles away. But I think I'm really happy with where I'm at the moment. Alhamdulillah, and I'm at a position where like I can look back and see myself transition through the years, and I'm excited for what's to come. And yeah, definitely, I think it's my education has also taught me how to be more confident and present information, like we've been saying all this time, like through like, you know, presenting things in class or group work or collaboration. I was someone that was really shy and couldn't collaborate with anyone to save my life, because I thought that I could just do everything on my own. But as one of my professors likes to say, you can't do science in a vacuum. And the more exposure I get, I believe in that more firmly, if that makes sense.
Definitely, yeah.
Sure.
So what do you guys look forward to seeing in the field of genetics in the future? This could be anything.
Honestly, I'm looking forward for the lab work. I keep saying that, but yeah, I'm really excited for that.
I think Tariq likes labs.
Yeah, it
Maybe.
shows.
uh, I'm kind of nervous, but good nerves. For the amount the because you know I'm still in my first year, and what I'm studying is pretty hard, and I know everything's gonna keep getting harder. So I'm really nervous, but really excited about that. I want to like challenge myself, and just I want to have a better understanding of what like the body and like what everything is in life, you know,
Yeah.
and I'm really excited about that part. And I'm excited to see what type of person I become in a year's time, and like what knowledge I have and what experiences I've like had. And yeah, that's really what's exciting for me.
That's so uplifting. I love that.
It is. It
Thank you.
really is just a ball of positivity.
I'm glad
Literally,
I
mashallah.
I'm glad I could uplift you guys.
I
Thank
think
you.
my answer is a bit more simple. It's very simple actually. For me, I think it's just like I'd like to see the word genetics more everywhere. Do you know what I mean? Like I'd like to see places that open up saying this is a place for genetics counseling, genetics disease, advanced genetics center, genetics research center. You know what I mean? Like you go around, you see clinics, you see hospitals, you see labs, but you don't really see the word genetics, which I
Yeah.
feel doesn't give it the recognition and acknowledgement it actually deserves. So
Mm-hmm.
that's where I feel like it's important for everyone to advance, even though like okay, it is small and it falls under like it can fall under biotech, it can fall under pharmaceuticals, but like for it to actually have its name out there is something that I'd really like to see. You know,
Yeah.
like if I were to come back one day to the Middle East, and okay, not one day, let's be realistic, I will come back to the Middle East. I'd like to open up a place or work in a place that's actually, it gives genetics the recognition it deserves,
Me
you know?
too. Definitely me too. I like resonate with that on such a high level. I think like as you said, I mean it can fall under biotech, it can fall under like just
Yeah,
science in general, but it shouldn't, because it's such a new and diverse avenue for helping people that isn't known about, you know? So
exactly.
I feel like we should make that we should see that be more available, or make that new, inshallah, in the Middle
Inshallah.
East in the future, or in other places too, because I know that genetic counseling specifically is a very new field, and like in America there's only 25 schools that offer it, which is
Yeah.
crazy to me, because like America has more than 1,000 colleges. So why aren't there more genetic counselors there?
Yeah.
um, but yeah, I think I'm also looking forward to seeing like new treatments and things being advanced, because I'm in my cancer bio course. I am very thrown into the research at the moment, and we're working on a research project that's considering like targeting a new protein for a potential drug to treat leukemia. And like
Amazing.
the stats are really cool, and the fact, I don't know, when I look at papers, sometimes I'm like, why did no one think of this before? You know, like
Right?
why is this so new? And why is it not out there already? But I'm excited to see things like that, especially like with, I mean, more specific things like CAR T cells and CRISPR, which we talked about before. So if you guys haven't
Yeah.
seen episode 3, you should hop on that. Talk about CRISPR, get some biotech and genetics in there. But
In there.
I'm excited to see these things being applied more extensively in the future.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
also I'd just like to add, like, I feel like just even the concept of genetic testing should be there. So I took a course
Yes.
this year, and like one of the subtitles for like the lecture was like pharmacogenetics, and it's basically like, okay, now you go to the doctor, you're sick, but we each have a different genetic composition, that like the way that I react to a drug is different from how you react to it because of your genetics. So instead of doctors just
Mhm.
prescribing the same medicine to everyone, like they need to get their genetics tested first to know which drug is most suited for them, rather than just giving them a drug and like administering that chemical into their body, not knowing whether they're actually going to make use of it. Yeah.
But this is such a cool conversation.
It is.
Okay.
So what were you saying, Aya?
Yeah, so I was just saying, like, it's the way your genetics deal with the different drugs or medicines that the doctors give you is what makes all the difference. And it's simply like it lies under the example of like a Panadol pill. Like, for example, you have a headache, you need, like, for example, 2 Panadol pills for the headache to go, whereas I need one. It doesn't really matter of the dosage of the medicine in the end. It's more like your genetic composition and how tolerable you are to that pill or not. So that's
Exactly.
where I feel like genetic testing needs to be a part of the equation for hospitals, for labs, and for so many other things.
Yeah, especially in the
Yeah.
Middle East. I mean, like, I feel like these things should be standardized. And the issue of availability is also like a problem. Like, not everyone can afford to get genetic tested, which is crazy because everyone's
Exactly.
genetics is different. So, like, it
Mhm.
should be something standard. Maybe it will be in the future, sure. I really hope it
Hopefully.
is. But yeah, personalized medicine, I think that is something that we should look more into because of the reasons that you were mentioning, of course. In my cancer bio class, I'm so sorry, you guys. I feel like I've just been ranting about this class. My professor would be so proud. Um, but yeah, like we were talking about a drug that treats 3 different kinds of P53 mutations. And P53, for you guys that don't know, is a gene that suppresses, it's like a tumor suppressor gene. So if that's not working, then you can get a lot of different types of cancers just because of how important its expression is for us. So we were looking at this drug, and there were 3 different drugs that treat basically the same problem, but our professor was like making a note of saying that you need to get like genetically tested for the type of mutation that you have, because if you take, like, for example, drug A and you have mutation B, it's not going to do anything for you because your genetics like doesn't allow for the drug to work, and also you don't have the right mutation. So yeah, personalized medicine should be more looked into.
Yeah, it's important.
Yeah, definitely. So lastly, because we are running out of time, as people who are currently in the crux or at the start of our educational and vocational careers, I feel like, are certainly qualified to give advice to the next cohorts of genetics and scientific scientists. So if someone came to you saying, oh, I'm interested in a career in genetics or science in general or STEM, what would you advise them? And what do you think is the most important thing to share in order to prep them for what's coming at uni or work?
I'd probably tell whoever I'm giving advice to just not be worried about the difficulty or the or what's it the amount of work you're going to be doing. I tell him or her, watch out, like focus more on, if you do you want to do this, do you see yourself doing this in the future, are you passionate about it, and like go for it, try it, even if you're not, if you like think it's fun or you want to do it or give it a try, go for it. But I just advise this person to give it a shot, because it's really like it's this field is widespread. It can go so many ways, genetics, like you, Salma, and like just there's so many different types of lab works that you can do, And I feel like we said, like a lot of people aren't really aware of this. And when they think of science, they either think of, oh, you're going to be doing this lab work, like the science tests or whatever, or you're going to be doing medicine. So I feel like people aren't aware of this, and like we need to like to share and show people like, oh, there's so many different directions you can go and paths. And like I feel like this Geneie really like helps people, and whoever's watching, like I think it may influence them to try science out in the future.
That's a really good answer. I like
So yeah,
that.
I advise them to watch the Geneie,
The
basically.
Geneie.
Exactly. This is
Oh,
my
thank you,
advice.
guys.
Yeah, for me, definitely, I'd be thrilled to welcome them on board, anyways, with like open arms. That would be the first thing I'd tell them. And then I feel like specifically for genetics, you really, really need the passion for it. Like,
Yeah.
it takes so much to actually like the subject and get through it.
Yeah.
Definitely get through it. Like, you will not get through it without the passion, and it's normal for the passion not to be there at the start. But that's why I'd definitely say if someone's not so sure that genetics is for them, then you can always start with like biological science, biomed. And because with biomed, my biomed is great because you get a real feel of every single field almost, like
Yeah.
neuroscience, chemistry, biochemistry, genetics. And then you just know, like through the content at a university level, that's when you know whether you have the passion for the subject or not. Because like you said, when we took genetics in IB in high school, it was like, what is this? Like, like I don't care about DNA replication, like, or meiosis. It's like I want the in-depth stuff. Um, and I'd definitely say that you just need time management. I mean, this is quite ironic coming from me now in third year, but like usually I'm good at time management, but
Girl,
you
same.
do need the time management for it. And I think that's about it. Like, yeah.
Yeah, I don't have anything to say now. Thank you, guys. Um, I mean, I love it when people ask me about like what they want to do in the future and my advice. I remember at Tariq, before you went to uni, you were just asking me,
Mhm.
"Oh, where should I apply? What should I do?" And I was
Exactly.
just so happy with the fact that you were interested in science. I was like, there's someone new that might be coming into our field, and our not so small community. But yeah, I think someone, as you said, needs to be really passionate about genetics in particular. And personally, I think that comes mainly through like uni education, like you were
Exactly.
saying, because you can't really get a full feel of what it's like when you're in high school. And also with like Tariq, with what you were saying, I think that you shouldn't fear the workload, because either way it's going to be intense. But if it's something that you love, you won't dread it as much. But yeah, I think doing what you love is really important, whether it's science or business or architecture or whatever.
Yeah, I
So
agree with that.
so, thank you to our wonderful panelists for joining us today, Aya and Tariq. Thank you for being here. I hope you guys enjoyed doing this interview as much as I did. It was really fun, and thank you for being part of the Geneie.
No
Thank you
problem.
for
Thank you for
having
having
us.
us.
It was an absolute pleasure. Like, I enjoyed every single second.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you. It was fun talking about two people who like enjoy the field and just getting to talk about it more. It was really fun. Thank you for having us.
I know I haven't had this kind of interaction in a really long time, so thank
You
you
have
guys
no
for like
idea.
showing up today. I'm so happy. So thank you to our listeners as well for your invaluable support and for joining us on this episode. We hope you guys liked it and we'll come back for more. Stick around because season 2 will be jam-packed with fun episodes and amazing guests like this one was. Until then, this has been your host, Salma, and you are watching the Geneie Podcast Season 2, Episode 1.